Good afternoon. I'm with Bob Moriarty of 321 Gold. Bob, we had quite the week.
Well, I'm kind of dreading tomorrow, but I'm going to stay up late and see what Shanghai does.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot to discuss about the precious metals action from last week. So it became increasingly apparent last week in the evening, in North America, so after 6 p.m., that there was some very powerful buying coming from Asia, and it was driving the futures for gold and silver up each night. And then obviously Friday happened. And what's interesting about Friday is, well, China was closed because of the time difference. What do you make of the move in silver last week?
Okay, two issues. All parabolic moves end badly. And I have said half a dozen times in the last month that in a rational market, we would have a correction. All parabolic moves end badly. Now, the guy who I think understands it the best is Martin Armstrong. And he said the interesting thing is this was not a retail circus with people rushing into the market. This was short covering. And I'm going to offer an interesting solution. And I don't think we've talked about this, but can you accept that there were two targets when Trump went after Venezuela? He was shooting at two targets, one of them being Venezuela and the other being China.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And the issue with Iran, he's shooting at two targets. One, of course, is Iran, and the other being China. Now, the way to prove it is quite simple. Trump is attacking Canada for attempting to make an economic agreement with China. Now, I don't feel Venezuela is the enemy. I don't feel that Iran is the enemy. And I certainly don't feel that Canada is the enemy. We would have a catastrophe in our economy if there wasn't a lot of cross-border trade with Canada. But Trump's advisors are telling him to attack Canada. And strange enough, since you have a physical market in Shanghai, China's asymmetric form of warfare could have been to kill the shorts. And the shorts have been absolutely murdered for the last 6 weeks.
Yeah, the silver shorts, I don't know if there were any left by Thursday evening, quite frankly. And I wonder, there's a lot of conspiracy theories obviously going around this weekend out there, and a lot of people saying it was a short attack on the silver market on Friday. What about just the idea that this market was highly overextended and everybody was sitting on one side of the boat and it tipped over?
Of course, exactly. It's a parabolic move. I called silver the top in silver to the day in April of 2011, and the article is still up, and it started off by saying all parabolic moves end badly. But I'm going to throw something in that's going to confound you totally. Now, I'm a big fan of sentiment. The Sprott Silver ETF, the PSLV, on Thursday had the biggest discount it has ever had. It had a bigger discount on Thursday than it did in 2020. 2020, physical silver got down to $12 an ounce, and the spot silver ETF got down to $11 an ounce. The discount on Thursday was bigger than it was in 2020. Now that's so bizarre. I don't know how to explain it.
Yeah, this is complicated, Bob. This is a different gold and silver market than anyone we've ever seen, and I mean anybody has ever seen.
That is absolutely brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This is totally different. We're off the edge of the map, and a lot of the traditional ways of explaining things, you can't explain things. You just made the smartest point that I've seen anybody move. It is a different market, and that's not necessarily good thing. Now, you want me to give you the really bad news?
Sure, yeah. Let's get the bad news first, but hopefully there's also some good news.
Okay. Remember when Trump had his tariff tantrum back early in the year?
Yeah, last year in April.
Yeah. Okay. The cryptocurrencies got massacred. Now, I have a friend who owns XRP, and I was following it for her. When Trump came out with its tantrum, XRP went down 30%. Hey, I got to tell my dog, shut up. XRP went down 30% in one day, which means that everyone who was leveraged, who was bullish, got closed out. And literally hundreds of thousands of accounts were closed in one day. But do you remember what happened the next day?
It went back up again.
It was the one-day crash. I've never heard that. We may not see another one-day crash until tomorrow. Okay, but and you're absolutely correct. XRP was down 30% when Trump came out with its tariff news, and it went up 40% the next day, which means that everybody who was short and leveraged got wiped out the next day. So the bulls that were on leverage got wiped out on one day, and the bears that were leveraged got wiped out the next day. This move Friday is so dangerous. It is going to put a lot of people into bankruptcy because this is a 10 sigma event that you cannot prepare for rationally.
Yeah, so that's also being bandied about, the 10 sigma event in silver. So if you do a statistical analysis of the magnitude of Friday's price action in silver, it's never happened before. This has never happened before in a single day. I mean, think about it. Silver was above $121 an ounce on Thursday at the high. And on Friday at the low, it briefly traded under $75 an ounce. So this is yeah, it's $45 an ounce, but it's a 35% move in a single day. And the volumes are also really mind-blowing. So the silver exchange traded fund, the SLV, traded over 500 million shares on Friday. That's a record. And also the dollar volume, of course, is another record because the price is so high. And then the 2 times the pro share silver, the AGQ, if you want to really juice it, you want to go 2x leverage. The AGQ dropped 60% on Friday, also on record volume. And actually, the AGQ traded its entire market cap in trading volume, almost $50 billion in trading volume. So Friday is a day for the history books in silver. It's different this time. We've never seen this before.
Well, we have seen this before in kind of an interesting way. If you go back to September and October of 2008, we were having $100 moves in gold, okay, which was unheard of at the time. The velocity and the speed in which things are changing, I'm going to say when the dust has settled, we're going to find out trillions of dollars were evaporated on Friday because anybody that was leveraged, either bullish or bearish, got murdered. And that's going to have a knockout effect. There was one bank that's already collapsed. And I'm going to tell you, I think the financial system is broken, and we're going to see a lot more examples of this shortly. Now, one of the things we should at least casually mention is the United States got an aircraft carrier with aircraft locked and loaded to attack Iran, and has issued a ultimatum to Iran. And I don't see any way in hell Iran is going to agree to it. So we literally are on the precipice of a major Mideastern war. So as bad as Friday is, we've got worse things coming.
Okay, yeah, I want to talk about Iran in a bit, but let's finish up on silver. So what strikes me, Bob, is I read things on X or on the internet at various people's blogs, Substacks. Some of it rings true. Some of the analysis seems pretty, fairly accurate. And other stuff just seems to me to be completely made up, and people trying to generate a narrative to suit their interests and what they want to be true, but it's not really true. And in silver, I don't buy the short attack, quite frankly. I think the shorts got obliterated in silver so far in January. And this is a market that just got simply way too overextended to one side. Sentiment absolutely reached an extreme last week. There's no two buts about it. I mean, I was in Vancouver for a week. I saw the sentiment and I shook hands, with the sentiment in real life. And now we need to find we need to have the market clear. The market, I believe, is broken, like you said. The silver market is broken. I think there's probably more than just the silver market is broken. It might be the Bitcoin market is broken too. Maybe the stock market is next, right? The silver market has to clear. And the physical market, a lot of people are saying there's no physical supply. Well, I'll give you a few anecdotes. I spoke to several dealers last week, and they were seeing selling from customers 25 or 30x buying from customers. So the gold and silver dealers that I spoke with either were buying way under the market price. I'm talking about when silver was 120, they were bidding 90, or they just stopped buying altogether. They said, I'm overloaded. I have too much inventory. I can't buy anymore. So when the physical market is functioning so badly or not functioning, there's a problem. And I think we got to that point in silver last week. And whatever was driving it to 121 in Asia was not really what was happening here in North America.
Absolutely. Let me point something out. And I was in gold and silver in late 79 and 1980. And I, in fact, went to one guy in Pennsylvania who set up a shop, and there were 50 people in one line, and there were 2 or 3 people in the other line, and the 50 people were waiting to buy, and the 2 or 3 people were waiting to sell. And I looked at it and said, gee, I wonder if I should buy or sell. And I thought, well, 100% of the people who are selling at a profit, and 100% of the people who are buying are hoping to profit, but they don't know if they're going to or not. I think it's time to sell. But here's what happened. This is important. There's a very subtle difference that you just alluded to, but I can explain. You could go to Shanghai and you could buy a 1 kilo bar of silver and take delivery at 100, I think it's $131 an ounce. However, the dealers here in the United States, they're not buying kilo bars. They're buying granny silver, and they shove it in 55-gallon drums, and they send it off to a refiner, and he can't get around to it for 2 or 3 months because he's totally loaded up. So the silver market in the United States is totally different than the silver market in China. And the dealers are forced either into paying peanuts for it or not buying it at all. Now, they don't want to buy at these prices and they don't want to sell at these prices because this is not a liquid market. And the chaos at the dealer level is going to last for months. And in fact, a lot of dealers who are not hedged are going to be in deep, serious trouble. If they were buying silver at $100 an ounce or $110 an ounce on Thursday, they got put out of business on Friday. So there's a lot of chaos, and the question is, where did it come from? And I happen to agree with Martin Armstrong. I think that this was short covering in the United States, and that shorts were getting killed. And it was a parabolic move, and all parabolic moves end in tragedy. But what's going to be really interesting, and I happen to agree both with you and with Martin Armstrong, this time is different than anything we've ever seen before. I'd like to see a 6-week or 2-month or 3-month correction, but we may not even have that. Now, if you remember from 1970 to 1980, in 1974, we started a correction in December. They were going to make gold legal to buy in January. So everybody bought up gold thinking gold was going to soar as soon as it was legal. So gold got as high as, I think, $188 an ounce in December 74, but it went into a correction that lasted for 18 months, and it got as low as 103. So from 1970, you had $35 gold to January of 1980 and $875 gold. But right in the middle of one of the biggest bull markets in history, you had a 50% correction. That could occur again.
Yeah, 100% it could occur again. And you know, so just sticking to silver, we hit 121, 50% is 60, you know. So in my mind, a pullback to 60 to 70, it's not a pullback, it'd be a crash. I mean, we basically had it on Friday. A drop back to 60 to 70 would be a great reset. It would fantastically reset sentiment and build a base to climb eventually back above 120 to 150 and probably even higher, right? But you know, when the market does it in one day, Bob, it's unlike anything we've ever seen before. I definitely think that there was no accident in terms of the timing of Kevin Warsh being announced as the next Fed chairman.
Who cares? Yeah, who cares?
No, but it helped accelerate the sell-off on Friday.
It was, people always explain things after the fact. You can go back to the last 5 pieces I've written, and every single one of them I've said, in a rational market, we would have a correction.
Yeah.
If you got a parabolic move, I don't give a damn what the excuse is, you're going to have a correction.
Oh, absolutely. I'm not arguing that, but I was there. I watched the headline hit the Bloomberg wire. I watched silver and gold trade in real time. I was in there buying and selling, and the Warsh news helped to crack the market further, right? And I don't think there's any accident that happened on a Friday, the final day of the month. So a little bit for the conspiracy crowd.
Yeah. Excellent point. I hadn't thought about Friday being the end of the month.
Yeah, so you get monthly close, you get all those closing candlesticks, those closing bars on the chart, and it all turned bearish in a few hours there on Friday. So we'll just have to see. Before we leave the silver topic, I want to ask you, when a market drops as violently as silver did on Friday, what would you expect to unfold over the next several days or week?
Strange enough, and I'm going to admit total ignorance right now, because the Shanghai physical market is an anomaly that you have to take into account, and it never existed before. So we have no history of what's going to happen. Now, if Shanghai opens at 140 tomorrow, which it could do, we're going to have an explosion in COMEX on Monday, an explosion higher. So we're in the most difficult and dangerous market that I have ever seen. And bulls got wiped out last week, bears got wiped out, and this is not a party that you want to attend.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. So normally we would expect that the silver market is cracked here and needs some time to seek its level and build a base. But we also cannot ignore the possibility that somehow silver makes a higher high again in February, right? Because this time is different, and the Shanghai physical market is something completely new and obviously extremely powerful for hard assets, silver, gold, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so I want to mention Bitcoin before we get to what's going on in Iran. Bitcoin cracked, and it's been cracking throughout January. It's been cracking for the last few months. What is Bitcoin telling us, Bob?
Again, you're probably talking to the wrong person. There are 17,000 variations of Bitcoin. And somebody believes every one of them is valid, at least one person per cryptocurrency. I happen to believe the whole thing is fraud. I love the gold and silver bugs because they talk about manipulation of gold, and they talk about manipulation of silver. There's 100 times more manipulation in the cryptocurrencies, but as long as they're manipulating the price up, nobody gives a damn. I look at the cryptocurrencies and I see 98% speculation and 2% utility. I don't fault the technical area, okay? From a technical point of view, it has validity, but is it money? No. And everybody's forgotten to talk about it, but Bitcoin's gone from 126 to 80, and that's a fairly substantial crash in its own. It took $1 trillion with it, and until Friday, gold and silver had never made $1 trillion moves. There were several $1 trillion that went to gold and silver heaven on Friday.
Okay, I'm going to throw something out there. Just an idea, could be way off. I'm going to say Bitcoin is a leading indicator for the Mag 7, and the Mag 7 is going to have a big drop at some point in 2026, and we're getting the warning signs a bit ahead of time, so pay heed to it. Let's talk about Iran. So what is going on?
Hang on. Let me expand on what you just said. That is absolutely accurate, and it's not just the Mag 7 that are going to crash. The AI boom is as close to fraud as anything I've seen in the stock market in the last 70 years. Okay, so Mag 7 is going to crash, and the AI boom is going to crash, and it's going to take the stock market with it. And that's in spite of the $12 trillion Japanese carry trade, where the Japanese are unloading everything they've got, including treasuries, including the Mag 7, including the AI, and repatriating the money. We're in a financial crisis unlike any in history, and probably worse than any in history.
Yeah. So if Mr. Market gives a gift here in the coming weeks or months and serves up physical silver, gold, platinum at much lower levels, hopefully people will take advantage of it, especially those watching this video. So,
well, hang on. Now, before we go to Iran, you did a brilliant interview with Robert Friedland. And of course, he's saying, hey, wait a minute, there's still going to be a lot of demand for copper. The only opportunity and resources right now is not in gold, it's not in silver, it's not in platinum, it's actually in the stocks of those companies. And Friedland pointed that out, and he was absolutely accurate.
Yes, the revenge of the miners. But then he also loves to say that you should build your house out of copper.
Of copper.
You should put copper in the walls, stack.
Yeah, I got some really bad news for you. Ted Butler used to post on the Kitco board. We're literally going back 25 years now. And he said in March of 2000 that silver was so valuable that you should buy silver and never, ever sell. And I wrote back to him and I said, okay, let's see if I figure this out. Silver's about $5 an ounce right now. So I go buy a bunch of 100-ounce bars and I never, ever sell. How much profit do I make? What should I do with my silver bars? Should I build a house out of my silver bars? So Friedland, because he's in the copper business, naturally, he's pushing copper. But Bob Moriarty was buying 100-ounce bars of silver when they were giving them away. And I'm going to build my shack out of silver bars, not copper bars.
Well, he also says that at some point you could tear your house down and sell the copper and buy a fleet of Lamborghinis. But I think it's just way better to keep the house and all the copper. It's more fun. I don't like the fleet of Lamborghinis, but that's not for me. Okay, let's go to Iran. Let's go to Iran for real here. So this has been brewing the entire month. Obviously, back in January 8th, 9th, there were some mass protests in Tehran. Evidently, they cracked down violently on some of these protesters. A lot of people died, a lot of people jailed. Trump's been threatening this for 3 weeks now. He sent an aircraft carrier, a battle group, a bunch of cruise missile destroyers. I don't know. We got a whole bunch of stuff over there. We got a lot of force in the Middle East. What's happening, Bob? What's going to happen next?
Donald Trump has painted himself into a corner. Now, let's talk about the riots. And there were very real riots, and the government absolutely cracked down. And they tried 800 people who were Mossad agents who got rolled up by the Iranian Secret Service, and they were going to hang them. And because Donald Trump works for Israel, he said, oh, God, you can't hang those people. Those are poor, innocent protesters. But the poor, innocent Mossad and CIA and MI6 protesters were running around shooting police, shooting children, burning down banks, burning down businesses. That, in the Western press, it's shown as protests, but it wasn't protests. It was riots that were started by Israel and the United States. Now, I regret people dying, okay? And even the Iranians have admitted that something over 3,000 people were killed. There are numbers up to 30,000 people killed, and I don't believe, and there's no credible evidence for that. But the Bisset actually admitted that we started the economic basis for those riots by trying to destroy their currency. People can't afford food there. They can't afford energy because the currency has crashed, and the currency crashed because of the United States and the economic sanctions. I'll point something out that is so simple, everybody needs to ask themselves, and they need to know what the answer is. What makes Iran the enemy of the United States? And frankly, I don't see anything that makes them the enemy of the United States. Now, do you know the three things that Donald Trump is demanding of the Iranians?
I know one of them for sure is getting rid of their missile program, which seems like a non-starter.
Well, there's three. One of them is no nuclear enrichment whatsoever. But if you recall, Donald Trump claimed total victory and said we had wiped out their nuclear enrichment facilities. Tulsi Gabbard in January or February came out. She's the head of the United States Intelligence Services, and said something that everybody in intelligence knows. Iran does not have a nuclear weapons program. Bibi Netanyahu has been lying about that, and Israel's been lying about that for 30 years. What Iran is doing is totally legal, and they were doing it in accordance with the IAEA. So Trump is saying no enrichment whatsoever. Okay, that's a non-starter. The second issue was ballistic missiles. Now, I happen to know the only country in the world that doesn't have a ballistic missile program.
Who's that?
Costa Rica. Now, do you have any reason why Costa Rica doesn't have a ballistic missile program?
I'm not even sure they have an Air Force.
They don't even have an army. Okay.
Yeah.
Costa Rica is the only people in the world who don't have some kind of ballistic missile program. So it's absolutely legal and frankly necessary for Iran to have a ballistic missile program. So there's no way they're going to back down on that. And the third issue is that Trump is demanding Iran stop supporting the areas around them, like the Houthis and like the Hezbollah and like Iraq. And the fact of the matter is, you couldn't possibly prove whether that was true or not. So Donald Trump is demanding something that Iran cannot possibly give them, and he's painted himself into a corner. If he attacks Iran, and there's an excellent chance that attack could take place tonight, everything's in place right now. That could go nuclear. And if he backs down, it looks like Taco Trump.
Yeah. So if he backs down after what he said, including in the days after those protests, he said to the cameras, to the Iranian people, hang in there, help is coming. That was like January 12th. Today is February 1st.
Wait. Who are we talking about?
Donald Trump.
Donald Trump? Wasn't he the guy that was going to end the war in Ukraine in 24 hours? Are we talking about the same Donald Trump?
Yes.
This is a different Donald Trump.
Will the real Donald Trump please stand up? No, so yeah, he said that in the days after those protests and some of the massacres that help is on the way. Don't worry. And I think 3 weeks is a long time for some of those people, especially in their situations. So yeah, he would look weak, especially after sending this whole big arsenal of air support and naval power. Yeah, it would look pretty weak. But then the alternative is to actually go through with the attack. And if he does the attack, he has to level the regime. He has to obliterate it, or else there's going to be a very, very bad outcome. And so the question is,
okay,
can
Trick
he
question.
do that? Can the
Trick
U.S.
question.
Yeah.
Okay. How does a nation that is nuclear armed of 9 million people defeat a nation of 92 million people that is not nuclear armed?
Yeah, we discussed this, previously. So that would be Israel, and they would have to use a nuclear weapon.
Well, here's what's scary to me. I believe none of what Israel says and 50% of what Iran says. Should the United States attack Iran, and I believe the chance is 60 or 70 or 80% of that occurring, Iran is going to attack every U.S. base in the Middle East, and they have the technical capability and they've got the weapons to do it, including the Abraham Lincoln. Now, I happen to be a giant fan of aircraft carriers because I was landing on them when I was 19 years old. There were 5,000 American kids on the Abraham Lincoln, and I do not want to see that ship sunk. And I believe that Iran and China and Russia have the capability of doing that. Should they do that, either Iran or either Israel or the United States would use nuclear weapons. That's how dangerous this is. Donald Trump has painted himself into the most dangerous corner I have ever heard, and we are closer to World War III than we have been in history.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, however, that I believe if the U.S. and Israel both attack, the regime in Iran, there's a very good chance it would destabilize the situation, enough that it might topple it. But it would take weeks at the very least, and it would be very violent, very messy, chaotic. And I would have to think that Iran would deal some pretty heavy blows in the process, either to bases in the Middle East or to Tel Aviv or what have you, right? A lot of people talk about they could sink a carrier. I'm a little skeptical of that, but I guess we might find out.
Well, strange enough, and that's exactly the issue. I could talk for an hour about the most important naval battle in history, which was the Battle of Midway. And the funny thing is, the Japanese won 95% of the Battle of Midway, and the Americans only won 5%. Okay, there was a 5-minute period in which they sunk 3 Japanese aircraft carriers because the aircraft carriers were loaded with the aircraft fueled and armed on deck, and they were able to blow them up. They could hit the Abe Lincolns with swarms of drones, and they could do a lot of damage. Okay, they do have hypersonic missiles. It is within the capability of the Iranians all by themselves. But one of the things we've just barely mentioned is both China and Russia have said Israel do not attack Iran. And they're both very heavily armed. And quite bluntly, China absolutely understands their target of Donald Trump. And I think the whole issue about gold and silver has a lot more to do with China being a target than most people realize. So we've got a very, very dangerous situation. But as the guy who spent 20 months in North Vietnam would be easy to attack compared to Iran. Okay, we're not going to change the regime in Iran. We can kill hundreds of thousands or perhaps millions of Iranians, and all that will do is harden their attitude. After World War II, the British went in and they studied the bombing campaign of the British and the Americans. And the conclusion they came to was rather remarkable. The bombing campaign on Germany made the war last longer because it hardened the attitude of the Germans. The Iranians are brave people, they're intelligent people, they're nice people, they're not Arabs. Okay, I don't have to agree with the government, and I don't, but nobody asked me. But Iran was not the enemy of the United States, and what Trump is doing absolutely threatens Israel and easily could threaten the United States. We could see something as dangerous as the Marianas turkey shoot.
Give your dog a little treat there, Bob. So, so what's interesting to me is the gold and silver price action prior to Friday, the week that was leading up to Friday, was increasingly frantic, increasingly urgent. And it indicated to me there was something going on in the background that wasn't in the Bloomberg headlines. It wasn't on X. And the only thing I can think of, it's got to be something with China, got to be something, with Iran. There's things going on that not everybody is aware of, and it's showing up in gold and silver price action. So I wonder if this attack actually happens, what would what would gold and silver do? I mean, is that going to make a new all-time high? Is that going to cause the Chinese to buy even more because the U.S. is attacking a major trading partner of China? Or the opposite? Is it going to trigger a market crash where we'll see stocks sell off? We'll see gold crash like it did after Lehman Brothers in September 2008?
We make a mistake when we talk about price, the price of gold or the price of silver. We're implying that gold is a factor, or we are implying that silver is a factor. But what's the other factor?
The dollar.
Thank you. Okay. When you talk about the price of gold, you are not talking about the price of gold. You're talking about the price of the dollar. And I've said many, many times, you know, this is my position. I haven't changed a single inch. The debt-based system of the West is collapsing. The dollar is going to collapse. Donald Trump is doing nothing but accelerating the collapse of this. And the question has to be, how much of this is a function of the dollar rather than being a function of gold and silver? Now, do you follow Tommy Costa?
No.
Okay, you should. He worked for a long time for Prescott Capital. Absolutely one of the giant successes in resource stocks management. They had, I think, 3 of the top 5 funds in the world last quarter.
So, Tavi left and he's working for himself now, huh?
Yeah, exactly. But Tavi has used figure $75,000 an ounce for gold. If you revalued gold to what it was in 1930, given the amount of the American dollars in circulation and the American debt, you would have to have $75,000 gold. All of the people talking about high prices for gold, if the price of Cheerios doubles tomorrow, what happens to the price of Wheaties?
I don't know. I don't like either.
You don't have to like them. You just have to buy them. That they're going to go up because there's a relationship between Cheerios and Wheaties, but there's a relationship between gold and silver, and there's a relationship between gold and oil, and there's a relationship between silver and zinc. There's all these relationships, and they were stretched to a maximum last week. And one way to decrease the stress is for the price of oil to double or triple or quadruple, or the price of zinc to double or triple or quadruple. I have said many times, and I absolutely will stick to this, you don't want to live in a world of $5,000 gold. Well, we're there now. But $5,000, actually $5,600 gold, means gold has gone up 271 times in the last 100 years. Okay, so how comfortable are you going to be at $40 a gallon for gasoline? How comfortable are people going to be paying $20 for a loaf of bread? And the answer is not very comfortable. The move in gold and silver is implying, is suggesting hyperinflation is nearing.
What do you think about the idea that copper is the new oil? So in the 2000s, the 2000 to let's say 2008 China boom that sent crude oil from below $20 a barrel to $142 a barrel by June of 2008, copper will do something similar, and it's already into the move. Copper in 2020 at the low was below $2 a pound very briefly. And if it does a similar move, a similar magnitude move to what crude oil did between 2000 and 2008, copper will get to $16 a pound in the next few years.
I think that's very valid. Now, let me point something out that's even more interesting. I'm looking at Kitco numbers. Kitco says gold was down $489, said silver was down $30, said platinum was down $448, said palladium was down $295, said rhodium was down $800. What copper do?
It was down what, 4%?
Copper went up 10 cents. It closed at $5.99. So the really amazing thing is, and there's some validity to my argument, there's a relationship between gold, silver, copper, and zinc.
Oh, you're talking about
Friedland's,
for the week. Yeah. So copper
yeah,
was actually up for the week. Yeah. Yeah.
well, no, it was up Friday. It didn't go
Well,
down Friday.
I showed copper down 3.8% on Friday.
Maybe at one point it wasn't, but it closed up.
Maybe that's the difference between the spot and the futures market. Okay, yeah, okay.
That could be. But let's go back to what Friedland said. Friedland said copper's the most important commodity in the near term. And he made some really good points. Copper is relatively insensitive to price because starting a mine takes 8 to 10 years. So he talks about much higher prices for copper. And while I know he's talking his book, I also believe that he's accurate.
100%. Yeah, I believe he's very accurate, and that's why I tend to focus on some of the things he says, because I think he's very accurate. I think he understands how the world works, how the resource economy works, and how unprepared we are in North America, right? All right, Bob, so let's talk about junior miners. Let's wrap up with junior miners. I noticed you talked about Aztec Minerals last week. Tell us about why you like Aztec.
It's cheap.
Okay.
Strange enough, that was precisely my point. Now, how familiar are you with the project?
Very familiar. I've been to Tombstone 3 times, so I've got you beat.
I've only been twice.
Okay, I got you beat. I told you.
No, but here's what's crazy. And I'll see how much you picked up. What do you think could be a home run out of the park for them? What have they come up with from a geological point of view that could be a home run out of the park? What could make them a mid-tier in 5 years?
Well, if they keep finding more gold and silver that's near surface, if they keep expanding the footprint of that pit area and show that, look, this deposit is much bigger than just this old pit. It extends to the south, it extends to the west. That's one thing. And I don't think the market fully appreciates that. And then you have the potential for discovery of a new CRD at depth, right? So they're drilling. Yeah. So yeah, they're drilling some deeper holes right now. And if that hits pay dirt, that would blow the cover off the ball.
Okay, who's the best CRD expert in the world?
Peter, McGaw.
Thank you. Where's he based?
Isn't he in Arizona?
Bingo. Where's Tombstone?
Arizona.
Okay, I have been in touch with the president of the company and said, hey, you need to get Peter McGaw over there because he's the top CRD guy in the world. And I spent 3 days driving around Mexico with Peter McGaw. That was the best experience I've ever had. The guy is absolutely brilliant. You just learn so much from him. And he happens to be the go-to guy for that area, first of all, the go-to guy for CRD. And the indications that I see, I think there's an excellent chance of that being a CRD system. And a CRD system is like a porphyry. There's no such thing as a small porphyry, and there's no such thing as a small CRD. Now, I think they're down 2,600 feet on one hole, which is a deep hole. And should that hit, you could see the stock up 10 or 20 fold. So I'm quite impressed with the project. I'll have to see if I get an invitation so I can match your experience. But I like the management. I like the company. I own shares. I bought shares in the open market, and I'm happy to do that. And quite bluntly, gold's a risk now, silver's a risk now, copper's a risk now, platinum, palladium, both risks now. However, the people who are going to be producing those are as low risk as you can possibly have. There's been a lot of information out lately that I think is very true. Commodities in general are cheaper relative to the prices of gold and silver than they've ever been. So I see commodities going up. I have not seen a top in sentiment on gold and silver. You follow the RSI, and the RSI did hit a record level for gold, but the DSI never went above 88. So we have not seen the last top in gold or silver.
I wonder, Bob, about that DSI, because it's uncanny to me that during this whole move here in January in gold and silver, that the DSI never hit 90. It's just I'm mind blown that it only hit 88, and even like Thursday it was 85 or 86. So I was like, what?
Here's what's funny. That's an excellent point. And that goes to verify Martin Armstrong's opinion that it's the sellers in gold and silver who've been moving the market on the COMEX. And I believe that that's true. And when a bunch of sellers come into the market, the commodities market measured by the DSI, which is all it measures, is what commodity traders are doing. Doesn't give a damn about price. Okay. RSI follows price. DSI does not follow price, it follows sentiment. And the sentiment of gold and silver never got above 88.
Yeah, I think this has to do with the bipolar world that we're living in. Frankly, I think China may be affecting how this DSI is reading the gold and silver market. I think if we had a DSI for China, it would have been 95 last week, quite frankly. So I think the fact that the market has changed, the world is multipolar. It's not just US centric anymore. Gold is not just an American market run out of the COMEX. I think it's changing everything. And I think the DSI may need to adjust itself a little bit. Let's talk about
hang on. Let me make one really important point. The purpose of the commodities market is not to exchange commodities. The purpose of the commodities market is to set price. Everybody confuses that, okay? And you have this dichotomy between a physical market in Shanghai and a paper market in Chicago. Now, as much nonsense has been put out about paper markets, how many shares are at risk with the Dow Jones ETF?
How many shares are at risk?
Yeah. Okay, and people go, well, let's talk about a Dow commodity. Do you understand that shares don't exist? It is entirely a fictional market. You do not need gold and silver to determine the price of gold and silver. The commodities market will tell you, because you have producers, you have consumers, and you have speculators, and the speculators set the price. When you're dealing with the Dow and the S&P futures, there are no shares involved. It's an entirely imaginary market. And here's the difference. Shanghai is 100% delivery, and COMEX is 1% delivery. COMEX is strictly a speculator's market. So you've got this dichotomy, and we're going to see tomorrow, frankly, who's leading, who's following. What scared me about last week, and you've alluded to it, the move higher in silver was a stair step. Up one step, another step, another step, another step, another step, another step. And by every measure, if it was a rational market, there would have been a correction. And my question, and I've said it in several pieces, is who's moving the market? My opinion is the Chinese are moving the market, and that could be very important. But we're in an area of total chaos financially, and I have said for years, and you've heard me say it 50 times, the purpose of owning gold, the purpose of owning silver is an insurance policy against financial chaos. I have never advocated people buy gold and silver as speculation. It's an insurance policy. And last week, the insurance policy paid off.
By the way, Bob, have you heard of Seabridge Gold?
I've heard the name, but it doesn't come to mind.
The KSM deposit in the Golden Triangle. Seabridge.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
the 180 million ounce.
I've been there.
System. Yeah.
So I've been there twice.
So Seabridge hit $52 a share a couple weeks ago. Absolutely enormous market cap, right? It dropped a lot on Thursday and Friday, as did everything else. But that's a multi-billion-dollar market cap company, and it's been a multi-billion-dollar market cap company for a long time. What do you think if there was a new junior that was about to make a discovery like KSM? How much could they be worth?
Same thing.
Yeah. So
look at Snowline.
Yeah, Snowline. Right. So, but Kingfisher Metals, KFR on the TSX Venture, they are on the hunt for another KSM. And they put out, if you pull up the chart, KFR, you'll see that they jumped from 25 cents to 90 cents in a couple of weeks, and then it settled at 68 cents on Friday. They just drilled a hole at the end of last year that indicates very strongly that they're vectoring into a copper gold porphyry in the Golden Triangle, and it could have the size potential of KSM, which is the Seabridge project there in the Golden Triangle that has 180 million ounces of gold and, I don't know, 10 plus billion pounds of copper. A very, very big porphyry system. And Kingfisher at the Highway 37 project has a lot of evidence. They also have a cluster of porphyries, copper gold porphyries. So Kingfisher, I want to alert everybody to, I'm very bullish. I'm very long on this one. And they just scratched the surface here. It's not even 100 million market cap.
Oh, okay. Do me a favor. Compare the grade of Kingfisher with that of Seabridge.
It's very similar. It's very similar, but they haven't hit the sweet spot
The core.
yet. Yeah.
Okay. I want to give you credit. You did a brilliant job when everybody was wrapped up in thinking about her husband's company. Tara Christie happens to be one of the most qualified people I have ever met. I love Tara Christie, and she runs Banyan, and everybody was whining and crying and pissing and moaning about Banyan and low grade. And you were the only one coming out and said, yeah, but they got a lot of gold. And that was absolutely valid. And the people who listened to you made a lot of money.
Thank you. Yes, Banyan has been more than a 20x. And you know, if you look at some of their recent news releases, they have some grade. They're drilling higher grade now. And they put out a silver intercept that was 10 kilo silver. So yeah, they got a bulk tonnage, multi-million ounce bulk tonnage gold system, but they've got high grade too. This is Keno Hill, right? This is one of the great North American gold and silver camps.
Well, did you follow Tectonic?
I know a little bit about it, but I'm not a shareholder.
Okay, I'm a shareholder and I followed up for years. And last year was an utter disaster. And they're starting to hit like crazy now. They were up 28%. They added 69 cents a share on Friday. What I'll say about Kingfisher, and the same thing is true of Aztec, the people who have the quantity and have the grade, the market will respond to it. And as expensive as gold and silver, and I think gold and silver are very expensive. I think it's ludicrous, frankly. But the gold shares and the silver shares are absurdly cheap. And you can invest in resources and things like KSM, things like Aztec, things like Tectonic in Alaska, things like Snowline, things like Banyan. There are so many great stories out there that are relatively low risk.
Yeah, that's the great thing about Kingfisher or Aztec or Hercules. These are all companies here in 2026 that literally one drill hole, obviously the right drill hole, could result in a 10x in any of these stocks. And Tectonic, wow, what a move Tectonic has had. And the fact that it was up big on Friday while the rest of the juniors were cratering is incredible strength.
Well, I'm trying to think, and you may be familiar with this. Somebody did some research into what gold and silver stocks did back during the 70s. And it's just come out in the last week or two. Does that come to mind?
Yeah, it wasn't me, but I read it, I think. Yeah.
Okay, somebody did an excellent report. I read too much, and I should have some way of storing this. And frankly, because I read too much, I can't do that. But pointed out there were a lot of stocks that went up 100-fold. And my opinion is the same thing is going to occur again. As bad as the crash was on Friday, you've got stocks like Tectonics, you've got stocks like Snowline, you've got stocks like Banyan that simply don't care.
Absolutely. Bob, fantastic conversation. Thank you so much for your time. And I'll wish you a peaceful week ahead.
I hope so. Because, of course, if World War III starts, we're not going to have a chance to have any more conversations.